Well, a multi-storey building has collapsed in Lebanon. The incident took place in the city of Tripoli in the north of the country. Rescue teams are racing against the clock to try to find survivors. At least 7 people have now been rescued. 9, though, are still trapped under the rubble. 6 are confirmed dead. It is unclear why exactly this building collapsed. All right, Al Jazeera's Khodr is live for us. She has just reached the scene. So, Zein, we have seen these pictures of the scene. It looks very busy. It looks very active. What are you seeing there right now? Is there still active efforts to actually find survivors who may still be trapped?
Well, we can now update the number of people who have been pulled out alive from underneath that rubble. In the past few minutes, we saw a 13-year-old boy, Ala, pull out alive. The crowd was cheering, and as we understand from the civil defense workers here, they are communicating with 3 other people underneath the rubble. So they believe that 3 other people are alive underneath what you are seeing, what used to be a 5-story building. But so far, they also pulled out dead bodies, 6 people dead as a result of this disaster. This is how people here are describing what happened. Now, we're getting conflicting numbers on how many people were in this building when it collapsed, with civil defense workers telling us that they believe 22 people were in this building. So rescue and search operations are continuing. People are still clinging on to hope. The building collapsed approximately 4 to 5 hours ago. But this is the 3rd building to have collapsed since the beginning of the year. A week or so ago, a building collapsed. 2 people were pulled out dead from underneath the rubble. Earlier this year, a building collapsed. There were no casualties because the families were able to evacuate as they heard the sound of cracking, their walls cracking. People here are not shocked that this has happened because this is an ongoing crisis in this city, the city of Tripoli in northern Lebanon. Many poor neighborhoods have buildings that are at risk of collapse. In fact, last month, local officials told us that 100 buildings are at risk of imminent collapse and that the families must be evacuated, and that 600 others are also at risk of collapse. Despite those warnings, people did not evacuate. And the simple reason is they have nowhere to go. People here are poor. The poverty rate is very high. So rescue and search operations continuing. They're hoping to pull out at least 3 more people alive from underneath the rubble. This is what rescue workers are telling us, but we have to wait to see whether or not they will be able to accomplish this.
Okay, so Zeina, so still hope for 3 people to be found alive under the rubble. Obviously a very active scene there trying to pull those people out. Your reporting on this has been fantastic just in the last couple of weeks. You mentioned it already. I want to also just read you, Zeina, a statement from the Lebanese Prime Minister. He just put out a statement. In it, he wrote, in part, I reiterate that the government is fully prepared to provide housing allowances to all residents of buildings that need to be evacuated, as well as to provide the necessary funds to immediately begin reinforcing buildings that need to be reinforced. So it sounds like, Zeina, this is something that had already been agreed. The government had already committed to doing. So how should we read this? Should we read this as a wake-up call for the government, as if they already needed one?
If you ask people here, they will tell you that giving us housing allowances to pay rent for 2 or 3 months will not solve our problem. But the current government cannot be blamed for this crisis, which really dates back decades, since the days of the Civil War. Many of the buildings in Tripoli were damaged during the Civil War back in the 1970s and 80s. And then, following the end of the Civil War, governments, successive governments, have been accused of neglecting this city, not doing enough for the people of this city. So there is a lot of anger here. They don't believe dispensing housing allowances will solve their problem. But at the same time, many of these buildings are inhabited by, excuse me, sorry, we have to move because of the heavy machinery. So the problem is many of these buildings are structurally unsafe, but like we said, they have nowhere to go. I'm going to show you the building surrounding the building that collapsed. It's just an unsafe structure that you can clearly see the cracks on the walls. And we have to remember back in 2023, that massive earthquake in southern Turkey, the impact was felt here in the city of Tripoli. And many buildings were damaged, yet no repair work was done, no maintenance work was done. People here are too poor to do that, and the government has many problems to deal with. It is cash-strapped, and successive governments have been blamed for decades, really, of bad governance. There was a member of parliament who I met here just a short while ago. He belongs to the quote-unquote independent bloc, and he was saying that there needs to be a national plan because we are talking about hundreds of buildings, thousands of families affected, billions of dollars needed to resolve this situation, this crisis, money that Lebanon does not have.
Zeina, those pictures behind you are incredible, and it is news to hear that there are still possibility of finding 3 people who are alive under that rubble. Difficult to see at this moment, given the scale of the destruction, but obviously people there crossing their fingers. Zeina Khodr for us there on the scene in Tripoli in Lebanon. Zeina, thank you.